So for my spiritual exercise, I went on a hike this morning, and I did that because I'm half contemplative oriented, but also half outdoors oriented when considering how I worship God and when I feel closest to Him. And the attributes of God that came to mind while I was going through these exercises was the healing He's done in my life, and also His yearning for relationship with me, with all of His children. And I was thinking about the works that God has done in my life and how a few years ago He completely healed me of my anxiety, and how a few months ago He healed me of my hearing, where I don't need to wear hearing aids anymore. And I asked God, I was just like, why, I understand, I am celebrating this healing that You've done not once, but twice, and even arguably a third time with a concussion I got 3 years ago that led to post-concussion syndrome, completely stopped my life for a year and a half. And getting to a point now where I'm in this program, where I'm becoming a counselor, and where God has truly healed me in a miraculous way, because people who had the PCS as bad as I did, they are not as recovered, nearly as recovered as I am. And the response that I got from God was, I don't send my soldiers into battle without their armor on. And that really convicted me in my relationship with God. And realizing not only is He there for me, and is He giving everything I need and more, but as I was reading Zechariah a few days ago, I was realizing that the bitterness and anger that God has in the Old Testament doesn't come from a place of oppression, which, when we think about God in a legalistic mindset, when He's angry with Israel and in the Old Testament, and when He's angry, even with us, it's not that He's angry with us because of oppression, but it's because He's so hurt. He wants to spend that time with us. And when we turn our backs away from Him in indifference and in selfish ambition, where we redirect the worship away from Him and towards ourselves without realizing it at times. That was, a big part of the message last night at church. He's hurt because He so desperately wants that time with us. And in Zechariah 1:3, He goes, "Return to me. This is the declaration of the Lord of armies, and I will return to you." And this language is used all the time in the Old Testament. And then in chapter 1, verse 15, He goes, "I'm fiercely angry with the nations that are at ease, for I was a little angry, but they made the destruction worse." And it made me realize how much God just yearns to be with us and to have us worship Him. And that's the part of my relationship with God that I really focused on during this exercise, because what I really focused on was that humility and that full surrender and giving that full worship to God, and realizing that when I do that first, He gives me truly everything I need. And being a very independent type of person, I'm very quick to want to lean on my own strength, and I'm very quick to want to do it myself and figure it out. But even on Monday morning, when I set that time aside and I worshiped God, and time that I would usually be spending doing schoolwork or, other responsibilities, I first gave my attention to Him, and He literally gave me all the time I needed the rest of the day to get everything I needed done, which usually would have taken me longer. And it was really, a way of God showing me, when you put your attention and your worship towards me, I really do take care of you, and I really do give you all you need. And it's really easy for me to get into this self-sufficient mindset, but when I'm redirected away from that and towards God first, then I see how He tangibly takes care of me. And so that's part of the personal characteristics that I wish to improve on, which is that independence, channeling it more towards using it as bravery into the calling that God has for me, and not leaning on my own strength through it, but leaning on His strength. And so I think with this exercise this morning, and with the church revival services that my church is having this week, which I don't think the timing is coincidental, I've definitely noticed a very big shift in my heart again towards truly putting God first and not putting myself first. And in my relationship to others, my family is a huge burden on my heart. And being the youngest of 3 siblings, really wanting to see my family become united again after my parents' divorce over a decade ago, and seeing how that completely fractured it, but fractured my family and fractured our relationships. But this summer, for the first time, starting to see the healing finally happen. I've been really praying over, my sister, and seeing how God has drastically changed our relationship in the last year to being one from hurt to one of love. And with my brother, seeing him see these, like, those small changes in him, where he was completely, detached from our family, to seeing his, the way he and I used to have a close relationship when we were kids, and just seeing, the little things in that. And so I've been really praying over it, and really praying that, that family and that healing and that love and community really bonds to be even stronger than before. And so I think for me, what was a tangible shift was being truly content, and being truly content in the joy and the peace that God has, even with situations that, I don't see the difference in yet, or I only see the small part of it, but truly trusting that He has everything in His hands. And so I think this experience has definitely affected me. It helped to seal the work that's been happening in my heart and soul in the last few days. It really helped to solidify how God is truly in control, and how truly I am not. And being in that truth, that full surrender, and giving God all the worship, and not keeping, 5% of myself to me, but giving Him 100% of the worship. And so what I found was really helpful about this focus time was realizing, how much I need it, and how much I've been hungry for it, and how much I can't step away from it. And so this week I also met with my supervisor that I'm going to have for my internship, and I was explained some of the clients that I'm going to be given, and it was that point where it's like, okay, these situations are so dark and they're so hopeless, but with God there is hope, and with God there is light. Only God can change these situations. Only God can have a way. And realizing that, my internship isn't an eventual reality. It's right in front of me, and I know the names of the people that I'll be working with. Learning about those cases, and having the revival services this week, and having this exercise, it's all just culminated in this full surrender to God, and realizing that I cannot do anything without Him, and that He is truly the source of my strength, the source of my bravery, the source of how my independence can either, I can just distance myself from Him with my independence, or I can use it to drive me further into the calling that He has for me. And so I think the biggest lesson that I've learned through all of this, and the takeaway that I have, is the full worship, the full surrender, and the full prayer with God.